Hey, it's Seraphin, and today I want to get into a healthier bread using a mix of whole wheat and bread flour. But this is not going to be a hard, dry loaf that you need to eat within a day because it doesn't taste good after. Instead, we're making a soft and naturally sweet bread that's richer in fiber and many more nutrients while still being absolutely delicious. And to do that, we make use of Tangzhong and honey. Tangzhong and whole wheat is a rather rare combination, which is a shame because they actually work very well together. As you might already know from our videos, Tangzhong softens the bread, extends its shelf life, and makes it sweeter thanks to the broken down starch in it. As for whole wheat flour, since it's made from the whole wheat grain, not just the endosperm, it contains the bran and germ, which are where many of the nutrients in wheat are found. This is what makes whole wheat flour more nutritious and beneficial. But there are some downsides associated with using whole wheat flour. One of the most obvious being the reduced volume of the bread. Pretty much like the downside of using tangzhong. To explain, let's get into some flour basics. You probably know by now that gluten is what holds the bread together, and it's made of proteins. These proteins are actually distributed throughout the wheat grain, including in the endosperm and the outer bran. This is part of why whole wheat flour typically contains more protein in total than regular white flour, as long as they were made from the same kind of wheat. The whole wheat flour used the entire grain, and so it contains all the protein. This may seem like a great thing, but the truth is that not all of these proteins can be counted on to strengthen the dough. Even though there are proteins in the bran, they don't readily form gluten networks in the way that proteins from the endosperm do. And in fact, the bran particles disrupt the gluten network and prevent it from holding in gas bubbles, thus resulting in a bread with less volume. To help counteract this, we could sift the whole wheat flour and remove some of the bran, but that would also be getting rid of some of the nutrients. We tried both methods in this video, and here's what they look like. Okay, in this recipe, to get a bread that's still relatively fluffy and soft with some of the benefits of whole wheat, we substituted 20% of the bread flour in the dough with whole wheat flour. And this 20% whole wheat flour will all go into the preparation of tangzhong. So it's a tangzhong 20 made wholly out of whole wheat flour. Using the whole wheat for the tangzhong, in addition to allowing it to rest overnight, will give the whole wheat a chance to soak and helps to reduce the phytic acid content. Phytic acid can impair absorption of minerals, so reducing it is definitely a good thing. Now, aside from using tangzhong, we also want to increase the amount of water in the recipe. Because it's whole wheat, the flour can absorb more water, so we're raising the hydration from what we normally use for this kind of bread, around 70% to 76%. Also, instead of sugar, we're going to use honey as our sweetening ingredient. It's interesting to note that many of the benefits of tangzhong are also brought to the bread by honey. Yes, honey not only makes the bread sweeter, but as studies confirm, honey makes the bread softer and last longer. When compared to a control bread made with sugar, breads with honey powder were found to be softer, less gummy, and less adhesive after a day of storage. This is mainly because of the type of sugar honey contains. Unlike table sugar, honey has large amounts of fructose and glucose in their monosaccharide forms. Fructose is more hygroscopic than sugar, and so we get a bread that retains moisture better. Much like tangzhong, this is one of the factors that helps the bread stay softer and fresher for longer. But honey, of course, differs from tangzhong in their effects on bread, and one of these differences is that the honey breads actually had increased springiness and cohesiveness. There was also the finding that the use of honey powder increased the volume of the bread due to its ability to accelerate yeast growth, as the paper states. But because we're using tangzhong, the weak gas retention of the tangzhong dough may contribute a negative effect on the final volume. And as mentioned, the bran particles in the whole wheat flour also lead to decreased volume, so the effects of the honey may be somewhat cancelled out. Okay, summing it up, the use of honey does result in better bread quality. The paper did recommend using percentages of under 10% honey powder though, because going beyond that was found to make the dough sticky and difficult to work with. They also had a sensory evaluation done by trained students and found that breads containing 5 to 10% honey powder were preferred. Now, you may wonder, since this study used honey powder, would using liquid honey really have positive effects to the same extent? For that, we can look at another paper that examined breads made with both honey powder and liquid honey. Their results show that their sensory panel of 31 people preferred the bread made with 100% liquid honey compared to other breads made with either sugar, honey powder, or various combinations. When measured, they also found that the hardness of the breads using liquid honey to be lower and the moisture contents higher. So if anything, using liquid honey should actually be roughly the same or slightly better than using honey powder. Although the study did find that the crust and crumb of breads made with liquid honey were actually lighter than both the control bread without honey and the one using honey powder. All this being said, there can be a lot of variation in different types of honey, so your resulting bread may vary depending on what type you have on hand. Okay, so with all of that out of the way, let's get to making our bread. Tangzhong is the first thing to do because it needs time to cool down and also rest overnight. So in a heat-proof bowl, we want to measure in 150 grams of boiling hot water. Then as soon as it's in, we want to add in 75 grams of whole wheat flour. This is still following our 1:2 ratio of flour to water, and like always, we prefer to mix it all together with a wooden rolling pin. Doing it quickly so that it doesn't cool too fast. Starch gelatinization requires at least 65 degrees Celsius, so we want the water combined with the flour before it goes below that. Just mashing it into a homogeneous and uniform lump, and when it looks like this, we're good. Cleaning up with a spatula. I'm just smoothing it out. Then we want to cover this with a silicone cap, and we're going to leave it to cool until it comes to room temperature before putting it in the fridge to rest overnight. Optional step, but highly recommended. When we take it out of the fridge the next day, we can make our final dough. Starting with mise en place, all the ingredients are already in order. So into our stand mixer's bowl, we're adding our Tangzhong first, just scraping it in. Then 70 grams of milk, 65 grams of water, 30 grams of honey, 6.5 grams of salt, about half a teaspoon of instant yeast, and finally 300 grams of bread flour. We've also measured out 25 grams of butter, but we'll let the dough mix for a while before adding it in, and we're also letting it soften for a bit outside. All right, now we're going to slide the bowl into our stand mixer and turn it to low for a few moments just to combine, prevent flour from flying everywhere, and then we turn it to medium-high and let it run for 4 to 5 minutes. It should come together pretty quickly and may look quite dry since the whole wheat and Tangzhong are capable of absorbing more water. When the time's up, we stop the mixer and add in the softened butter, using a scraper just to clean up. We turn the mixer back on, first on low to briefly combine. The dough will come apart a bit, that's fine. Then we turn the speed to medium-high and let it run for 5 to 6 minutes. If your butter is too cold, turning the speed to medium-high immediately can cause it to literally fly. So let's not make a butterfly and just make sure to properly soften our butter. Eventually the dough will come together like this, and it should clean the bowl up pretty well. That's a good sign that the dough has enough gluten development. And okay, we stop the mixer, pull up the dough, and now we're going to quickly prepare a bowl by lining it with some oil. We're also going to cover our hands. Then using a scraper, we scrape the dough out of the bowl, getting every piece. And we'll shape it into a smooth boule just in our palms before putting it in the bowl. We cover this and leave it to bulk ferment for 45 minutes or until it almost doubles in size. The timing can vary depending on your room temperature, so make sure to adjust as needed and keep an eye on the dough. Once the time's up, here's how it should look. Now, we're going to continue by uncovering the dough. Then we want to dust the work surface with a bit of flour and our hands as well before punching the dough down. Very satisfying. After that, we want to get the dough out of the bowl and we're immediately dividing and pre-shaping it. Just using a scraper to divide, quick and easy. With the help of a scale to get equal parts. And you shouldn't really need to add too much flour to make sure the dough doesn't stick. Should be quite dry. Once the dough's been divided into two, we'll quickly pre-shape them into round boules. Not too tight, just until the skin looks smooth. It's a super fast process, as it should be. Okay, now I'm covering the dough balls with the glass bowl. We're going to give them a bench rest, letting them relax for about 10 minutes. This is to prevent the gluten from being too tight when we shape them. In the meantime, we'll prepare our loaf pan by thoroughly lining it with some non-stick coating using our silicone brush. You could just use some butter or oil. When the loaf sticks, it can be pretty difficult to get out, so make sure to get every nook and cranny here. When the 10 minutes are up, we can come back to our dough. To prevent any sticking, we'll dust the surface with a bit of flour before taking one of the dough balls and flipping it over. With our rolling pin, we want to stretch and flatten it out into a long rectangle. Using a little bit of flour here and there, we're also making sure to pop any air bubbles at the edges. We don't want any gaping holes in our bread after all. Okay, when it looks like this and it's long enough, we're going to fold in the sides this way, laying the second side in so that it goes over the first one. This is to give us some nice clean lines on the left and right. We flatten this out again with the rolling pin, just evening it out, making sure it's the same thickness and getting rid of any bubbles again. It was very hot, so they were popping up left and right. This is neat and tidy already, so it's time to roll it up. To prepare for this, I like to make sure the bottom is sealed down, just pressing so it doesn't move. This also makes it easier to seal the roll later on. Following that, I take the top of the dough and slowly roll down. Make sure not to tug on the dough while doing this, otherwise you might get a roll that looks kind of like a sausage roll, so don't pull, just slowly roll it down. I also give the sides a little pat inwards, just making sure the dough doesn't go out of alignment. Continue like this all the way down. Then when it reaches the bottom, use a scraper to loosen it. And after that, we're going to seal it by pinching the seams together. Just a quick extra step to prevent the dough from unraveling. We'll put this finished roll aside and repeat the same steps on the other piece of the dough. Again, just the same thing, trying to use as little flour as needed to prevent sticking. The most important step really to ensure neatness is to get the sides nice and straight. The scraper is very handy for this, so I'll scrape in to flatten the sides and then roll it out to make sure the dough's even. When folding in, we also want to make sure we don't trap any air inside, so we're patting it down while we fold the dough. Doing the same thing naturally when we fold the second side over it. Rolling with the rolling pin and making sure it looks good before continuing. Make sure to keep the scraper handy when rolling the dough up. If the dough sticks to the surface, you can just quickly scrape it up and continue rolling. I will say though, even if you were to shape it sloppily, the bread would still come out delicious and awesome. It just wouldn't look as good. So follow the shaping process with ease. And alright, with both of the rolls done, we're going to put them into the loaf pan. But not just any way. For maximum volume, we want to put them in so that their swirls are in opposing directions. So arrange them like that first before putting them in, seam side down. Once they're in, we give them a good press down with our knuckles, double checking that they're centered, and also to have them fill the pan properly. Cover the pan, and now we're letting the dough proof for about an hour. This is influenced by our room temperature, and Tangzhong bread requires a longer proofing time, so that's what this time is based on. Again, the fermentation time may vary based on your conditions. Sometime before the dough is done proofing, we'll start preheating the oven to 180 degrees Celsius. Every oven is different, so make sure to set aside enough time for the oven to preheat. Okay, after an hour, the dough should look like this. It's risen pretty significantly and looks pretty good. So this is as much as we want it to rise. We're going to slide the lid of the loaf pan closed and put it in our preheated oven, bottom rack at 180 degrees Celsius on top and bottom heat for 35 minutes, and then at 150 degrees Celsius for 5 to 10 minutes. And we're done. Get the pan out of the oven, and as long as it was lined properly, the bread should slide right out with a little knock. It looks absolutely gorgeous and smells wonderful. Whole wheat bread definitely has its own aroma. It's such a nice and warm smell. Definitely whets the appetite. We do wait for it to fully cool down before cutting though, because we want a nice and beautiful crumb like this. If you cut it too early, it can end up sinking a little and it'll have a crumb-like mush because that steam hasn't left it yet. This is also a bread that lasts for a pretty good while, and as with most Tangzhong breads, it also tastes noticeably sweeter the day after you bake it. All in all, this is a delicious bread. The flavor of the honey and the natural sweetness of the Tangzhong blend perfectly with the whole wheat, making a bread that goes very well with both savory and dessert options. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and bye!